Good morning. It is October 6th. It's Monday. I'm meteorologist Craig Moeller. You found us here at the weather desk. If you are a regular viewer of our program, you know we do this each and every weekday morning around 9 o'clock right here on 13 News Now Plus. You know, we also post this out on YouTube. So if you found us here on YouTube, we're happy to have you along, and you always want to check in with 13 News Now Plus as well, because there's a lot of other great programming throughout the day that you'll find on 13 News Now Plus. But you're here for the weather desk. That means you want to know about today's top weather headlines. We've got some interesting stuff to cover with today's show. We're going to go back and revisit last week. Oh, my goodness, what a week it was with the active tropics. And we'll kind of go back and just revisit that a little bit more. Would you believe a ninth home on the Outer Banks collapsed from the beach erosion and the rough surf that we were dealing with? So we'll update you on that situation. Things have improved as we go through the day today, but we could have Jerry forming very soon. The question is, does that happen today? Does it happen tomorrow, in the next couple of days? We'll talk about where our next real significant threat for tropical development is in the Atlantic Basin. And we've got Priscilla over in the Eastern Pacific. We'll talk about its proximity to Mexico and who needs to be paying attention to Priscilla over in the Eastern Pacific. So a lot to talk about in the tropics. In addition, we've got some really interesting stories. Overnight, we got more video coming out from what had happened in Salt Lake City. They had record rainfall. Now, I used to work out in Salt Lake City. I was there in the mid-90s, from 94 to 1997. Absolutely breathtaking country. I mean, it is beautiful. The Wasatch and the Uinta Mountains, it's just gorgeous, the whole area. The Ochre Mountains, I'll show you where those are coming up. It is a very dry climate. You hear about the Great Salt Lake, and then you hear about the Salt Lake deserts, the West Deserts, all of that, the Salt Flats. Well, they had the most rain that they've had, second most on record, but since, you know, they've been keeping records since 1901, Salt Lake Valley, they've had the second most rain, and it came over the weekend. We'll show you how that happened. We're also going to talk about a snowstorm that impacted Mount Everest, trapping hundreds of climbers, and the rescue efforts. They've pulled hundreds down off the mountain, but a real effort there in Mount Everest. There are also landslides that we're going to talk about, some other parts of the world internationally, and just some really interesting weather taking place over in Asia, and specifically we're going to come back and talk about those rescue efforts in Mount Everest. Now, we're also going to talk about the weather here. We've got the severe weather outlook, and honestly, there's not much going on right now across the country. There is the threat of excessive rainfall, and we'll get into that. But, you know, we still have some of these, you know, potential significant weather impact type of situations, whether it's the next 7 weeks of the hurricane season, which continues through the end of November, or some of these other larger kind of weather extreme events that we've been dealing with. A lot of folks have been asking, could the government shutdown impact the response efforts from the government if we have more of these disasters? We're going to show you a story on that and revisit that a little bit. And then we've got a supermoon tonight. We'll talk about what that means and what you can expect if you look up into the sky. Here in Hampton Roads, our weather looks awesome for enjoying the supermoon. So these are some of the topics we'll cover over the next 25 minutes or so. We're going to start off, though, by revisiting what happened last week. Here's the track of Humberto, at one point a Cat 5 hurricane. This thing was so big and so powerful as it was churning here, sending out large wave action, really stirred up the western Atlantic. And then as it made this pivot and turn, it just kept sending the waves out. That's why it was so unsettled. And you see this little strand right here of land. That is the Outer Banks, and that southern tip, that's Hatteras and Buxton. So that's kind of sticking its kind of nose out a little bit more into the Atlantic. And with Humberto out there, such a powerful major hurricane, it was creating a lot of wave action. Not only did we have Humberto, but we also had Imelda. And Imelda's track came up here, stayed farther south, both of these hundreds of miles to the center from the Outer Banks. But this, too, created a lot of wave energy that came up. impacting Ocracoke Island and eventually over to Buxton and Hatteras. It then moved off to the northeast. That one rolled over Bermuda as a Category 2 hurricane as it moved along. Imelda did, but again, with so much activity, we had those issues last week. And crews on the Outer Banks spent the weekend cleaning up several collapsed homes in Buxton and Rodanthe. Hurricanes Imelda and Humberto, as I just showed you, stirring up that rough surf off the Carolina coast last week, caused now 9 homes to collapse within a 4-day period. And this is a look at the 9th home that collapsed, which was swept away by the ocean in Rodanthe on Friday night. All of those homes were vacant, so that's important to note. There was nobody living in them at the time when they fell. The Cape Hatteras National Seashore is urging visitors to stay off the beach for now while they clean up hazardous debris. You think about that again, all of that activity, you get the homes going down, and then when it's a pile of boards and construction materials, the ocean carries it in, carries it out. You've got boards with nails and screws and other fasteners. You've got broken glass kind of swirling around. There's just a lot that people can get hurt. So again, it can be dangerous, and you are urged to stay away and let folks get that cleaned up before venturing out onto the beaches down there in those areas where the homes collapsed. We're going to talk about how things have improved. If you were watching last week when we were monitoring conditions for the southern Outer Banks, some of these buoys at that time were in that kind of 15, 14, 15, even 17-foot range, some of the larger swells that were offshore a little bit. Of course, we had the wave action, and the tides were up because, if you recall, there was high pressure off to the north, and we had a trough here off to the southeast, and that was creating a strong northeast wind, which brought the tides up. So the tides were running above normal. Then you had the tremendous wave action on top of it, and that's what created the beach erosion, which eventually took out those 9 homes, southern Outer Banks and down around Buxton. Things are quieter right now, but that doesn't mean that we don't have to keep our guard up. Take a look. We've got our next area that is likely to develop out here. This is an area of investigation. So as we start off, I'll just quickly tell you the Gulf, quiet for now. That's a good thing. Remember, last week we were monitoring an area around Florida, and there was some concern maybe we'd see some tropical rain somewhere in this area. There could be some issues. Right now, the Gulf looks pretty good, so that's good. Down across the Caribbean, things also very quiet right now across most of the Caribbean. There's some convection, some storminess here north of Central America and not too far from the Yucatan Peninsula, but it's not organized. So right now, the Caribbean, quiet. That's good. All right. As we turn our attention, though, back here, this is an area that is likely to become our next organized system. And as we track this for you, we're going to go ahead. Let's take this full for just a second, because what I want to do, I want to get over and take a little closer look just to make sure the Hurricane Center didn't just update anything else on this. I want to make sure we're still at 70%. So as you take a look there, you can see in the next couple of days, in the next 48 hours, the chances were reported to be right around 50%. All right, as we look here, and it is still, let's see here, yep, still 50 and 70%. So you still have that 50% chance over the next, couple of days. But out 7 days, we have a 70% chance for development. Now, this is a look at the GFS model, and you can see how it's moving along. And as it goes along here, gets into the main development region, this is going to be more supportive for development. So it looks like this is where it's going to start to take off here. And this is Thursday. Okay, so a couple days from now, a few days out, you can see, again, the Lesser Antilles, the Virgin Islands here, watching this as it moves along, should stay to the north and northeast. But some rough seas there, this thing ramping up. This would likely become Jerry, the next name on our list. And then you see it makes a run towards Bermuda, but stays out to the east of Bermuda. This is the GFS model, and it continues off in that direction. We've got another area of low pressure swinging off the northeast, which would maybe help kick this thing out. So right now, not a threat to the eastern seaboard here in the United States, but folks in Bermuda will want to pay close attention, even down around the Lesser Antilles. As it goes, it would be sending some large swell back towards the islands. It's interesting as we look at the GFS model, and things can change with this a lot from run to run, but it looks like there's a pretty significant storm system working across the central U.S. that we'll be watching. That would come in the end of next week, so we'll see. All right, as we take a look at the models that the Hurricane Centers run, this is on Invest 95L. You see how the majority of those models do turn it to the north. There's Bermuda, recurving it back off to the northeast before even reaching Bermuda. A couple outliers have a little farther to the south, but that is the thinking overwhelmingly. Very much in line with what I just showed you with the GFS. So I'm at least encouraged that that, again, looks pretty good as far as the U.S. is concerned. Again, the next name, Jerry, after that, Karen. So we'll see if we get Jerry forming here in the next few days, and we'll continue to monitor that closely. Now, not only do we keep an eye on the Atlantic tropical basin, but we also keep an eye on what's happening over in the eastern Pacific. And this is Priscilla. You see the Mexican coastline here. Priscilla is actually forecast to kind of parallel the Mexican coastline over the next few days. This is a hurricane, and you can see the location. I was just kind of throwing a distance gauge on it, and really I probably could run that out another 10 miles or so if you were to continue. It looks like the center of that's maybe a little bit over, but I was kind of going to the northeast kind of center of this, or the eye of that. So you're talking a couple hundred miles offshore. Let's give you the latest on this. With the 8 a.m. advisory is actually 240 miles south-southwest of Cabo Corrientes, Mexico, and you can see how it's forecast to continue moving along. Winds have been 85 miles per hour, gusting to 105, but it's forecast to actually strengthen a bit with maximum winds around 100 or 110 as we go over the next couple of days. It would then weaken and eventually turn maybe a little bit more to the north as a remnant low. So we'll monitor all of that. We'll let you know what develops, but that's the latest on Priscilla as we look there in the eastern Pacific. All right, aside from that, right now, that's the thing that we're watching most concerned with, but there is one other area that has a 60% chance of development that may follow kind of on the heels of Priscilla. So we definitely want to continue to monitor all of this, and we'll be doing it. And I'm glad that you found us here on the weather desk, but you know, we've got more of this tropical season left, and all through the hurricane season, you can get updates on what's happening in the tropics. Hurricane Hub Live. That's every day, not just Monday through Friday, but on the weekends as well. At 8 o'clock, we have a special live update with an even deeper dive into the tropics. Tim Pandagis, our chief meteorologist, goes over everything you'd want to know about the tropics every Monday through Friday. Hunter Force has you on the weekend. And again, it is a great program with a lot of good information. And as I mentioned, we're not out of the woods yet. We've got another 3.5 weeks or so left here in October. And then as we go through November, things do wind down. But you can see we've passed the peak, and hopefully things will start quieting down. Not yet, though. I just showed you what will likely become Jerry. We'll see if anything else does develop. Now, we take you from here with the tropics. I want to talk to you about what was going on in Utah over the weekend. And I'll put this into motion here. Look at that heavy rain in the Salt Lake Valley. Man, it just doesn't happen like that very often. This is very, very rare. I'll zoom in. And as I mentioned, I told you we are at the beginning of the show. I used to work out in Salt Lake back in the mid-90s. This is incredible. You have the canyons here, Big Cottonwood, Little Cottonwood canyons, Immigration Canyon. In the Salt Lake Valley, you've got this low valley area between the Wasatch Range, and these are the Ochre Mountains. And what happened here over the weekend, that heavy rain setup, and again, it's just so rare that they would have that much rain in such a short amount of time. And we want to take you now to Utah, where the flooding overwhelmed parts of the state over the
40 years, never had this type of water, ever.
Salt Lake City officials say the system is overrun with water, flooding moving in quickly.
It took about 20 minutes for it to cross the river and get halfway up our backyard, is all it took, was about 20 minutes.
We've got lots of rain. We've had, even in the '84 flood of Salt Lake, we didn't have this.
It's the county's flood management that is in charge of this area. They're working to send more pumps to help get the water moved out.
It's a lot of water, so yeah, I've never seen this before, so hopefully they'll get it open and it'll go down.
City crews working to help neighbors deal with all of the water.
Hard at work.
The fire department came, the city has been here doing sandbags. They've all been great. They got here quick. The water out there, I mean, that's just crazy. I've never seen water on the street like that before, and never in our backyard, ever.
It is incredible to see. Again, they just don't get this kind of rain out there. You get some high base thunderstorms in Salt Lake, but typically it's so dry in the lower atmosphere that as some of the rains fall aloft, it evaporates on the way down, what we call virga, and they do get some occasional rain showers, but to have that type of persistent, steady, heavy rain, it's just something that they're not used to. They got more than 2.5 inches of rain on Saturday. Again, that was the second wettest day in Salt Lake City since 1901. All right, we're going to pull back out from here, way out, and talk about international stories right now. Let's take you to the other side of the world. Rescue efforts are underway after a snowstorm trapped hundreds of hikers on Mount Everest in Tibet. Standing at 30,000 feet, Everest is the highest mountain in the world and straddles the border between China and Nepal. So far, about 350 climbers have reached a rescue point at a tourist campsite about 16,000 feet up. Rescue crews have been in contact with another 200 hikers. We're told the snow is about 3 feet deep and it has crushed tents. Really a tough situation. Now in Slovenia, rescue teams recovered the body of a Croatian mountaineer swept away by an avalanche over the weekend. 2 more mountaineers are still missing. Those climbers were part of a group of 7 heading up the Tosk mountain in northwestern Slovenia. 4 of them decided to take a break while 3 others continued and got caught in the avalanche. The search for the remaining 2 climbers will resume today. And now to India. Rescue missions are underway after landslides in the eastern part of the country. Those landslides are in Darjeeling, and they were triggered by days of heavy downpours over the weekend. At least 24 people have died and several more are still missing. That region is forecast to get even more heavy rain through Tuesday. Tough situation. All right. Well, we are going to take a short break. And when we come back, we're going to have the look, obviously, at our forecast for Hampton Roads. But beyond that, we're going to talk about how the government shutdown could impact emergency response agencies. And we've got our supermoon tonight. We'll talk some more about that coming up after the break. Welcome back to the Weather Desk. You know, we still have not quite, but almost 2 months left on the hurricane season, and there are some concerns that the government shutdown could hinder response efforts if we got a big storm between now and then. Ivan Rodriguez explains how NOAA and FEMA are working through the shutdown.
The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration and the Federal Emergency Management Agency will remain open because they're deemed essential to the protection of lives and property, but employees will still feel the impact.
They're doing the work without pay, without an understanding of when this shutdown is going to end. Will they get that back pay eventually?
Chris Vigaski with WiscoNet says he hopes the shutdown is resolved quickly so it doesn't severely impact the livelihoods of employees. The Weather Forecasting Agency has less than 4,000 employees for the first time in decades. It lost more than 560 people to layoffs, early retirement incentives, and other programs aimed at shrinking the size of the federal government. The agency has enough staff to accurately predict tropical storms and hurricanes, says a NOAA official who spoke to CNN on the condition of anonymity for fear of retribution.
The question, of course, is for how long and what other supporting capabilities, if you will, might be compromised, especially with so many people being furloughed right now.
With some local NWS offices short-staffed, former NOAA Administrator Richard Spinrad worries about weather events happening simultaneously across the country.
What happens if we have another hurricane outbreak and some wildfires in the West, severe drought in the Midwest? All of a sudden, you're stretching that workforce so very thin with regard to providing those services across the country and for all of these different environmental hazards.
I'm Ivan Rodriguez reporting.
How all of that plays out, we're watching. I can tell you again, looking at the National Hurricane Center, some of the different sources that we turn to for different information in what we share with you, they are quick to point out that, hey, these services are still up despite the shutdown. They're getting through it. And again, hats off to all the men and women with the National Weather Service and NOAA and FEMA, again, working to help provide these services. Here's what we have right now. Nothing threatening Hampton Roads, but I do want to expand the view and talk to you about some of the areas where we are tracking wet weather right now. And we can start off by zooming in up across the central U.S., and this is parts of Kansas into Missouri. Some pretty intense rainfall north of Kansas City, back up south of Des Moines and back over to Omaha there in Nebraska. Again, this is non-severe, but we do have some heavier pockets of rain, and we're going to continue to watch this as it moves along. Showers continue off to the north. I can tell you we're going to be watching all of this. There's a frontal boundary that is kind of working across the central U.S. that will continue to slide eastward, that is eventually going to produce chances for rain across Hampton Roads. Some more heavy rain down across parts of Louisiana and Mississippi, from Jackson, Mississippi out to areas west of Hattiesburg and then into eastern Louisiana. We also have some more rain pushing onto the Florida coast. As we take a look at the outlook for excessive rainfall, I did a severe weather check, with the Storm Prediction Center, their outlook, and really there's no areas that are specifically identified for severe storms. So that's good news, but there is this level 2 risk for excessive rainfall here back across portions of Indiana and Kentucky, southern Illinois, the boot heel of Missouri, and eastern and northeastern portions of Arkansas. This includes the Memphis area, Paducah, Kentucky, around Cape Girardeau, Missouri, and back up through southern portions of Indiana. Louisville, Kentucky, you're seeing it, that level 2 threat for excessive rainfall, and extends close to Cincinnati, not quite up to Cincinnati, but bottom line is we could see some very heavy rain right there. As we take a look, no rain over our immediate area. We are looking good as we step outdoors. This is our Thompson Creek Window Company sky view. This cruise ship that is just pulled into Norfolk at the at the Half Moon Cruise Terminal. Mein Schiff, it is a German cruise, and you can see they are in port and enjoying Hampton Roads right now. 68 degrees, winds are calm. We've got beautiful weather out there as we go through the day today. We'll see more and more sunshine. So take a look. Here's our quick reminder. Those rip current threats still high down along the Florida coast. For our area, finally, after having like a week with that high threat of rip currents, we're just moderate for our coastal waters. You get down south of the Oregon Inlet and Kill Devil Hills down towards Hatteras, there's still a high threat of rip currents down at the southern Outer Banks and along the Jersey Shore and the Delaware beaches as well. So think about Rehoboth. Some of those areas could see some could see some rip currents as well. That risk is pretty high. Out on our water, though, the Chesapeake Bay, very flat today. We have the waves down to just a foot. And honestly, I was kind of surprised to even see the moderate risk of rip currents because the seas have calmed down quite a bit at the beach. You're still seeing that threat, so don't drop your guard. Water temperatures in the low 70s, but the seas much, much calmer than they were last week. Now, as we take a look at the futurecast, you can see the skies are going to clear out. And as we go through the evening, we're looking at mainly clear skies for this evening. This is fog tomorrow morning. But I want you to keep your eye to the sky tonight because tonight's full moon will be a supermoon. It's the first of 3 to happen this year. A supermoon happens when the full moon is closer to the Earth in its orbit, according to NASA. It makes the moon look up to 14% bigger and 30% brighter than normal. So something to check out there tonight. Again, we'll have great viewing during the evening, but then some more fog developing early tomorrow morning. That fog's going to burn off tomorrow morning, and we're going to see pretty nice conditions. Very low risk of a stray sprinkle down to the south. Our Tuesday, I think, looks good. Wednesday, different story. See the rain coming in later on Wednesday. We'll see chances for showers eventually. That will push out, and we will see the nicer conditions coming up. Thursday's going to be breezy, and then Friday looks pretty good. So here's the forecast for today. You're going to see the temperatures upper 70s to low 80s across the region. It's going to be a good day, a little bit warm. These temperatures finally back up above average. Temperatures upper 70s to near 80 on the peninsula, mid 70s over on the eastern shore, 78 at Gloucester, and down to the south. We have temperatures also in the lower to mid 80s for inland parts of North Carolina, mid 70s at the Outer Banks. We want to go ahead and show you the 7-day forecast and what you can expect. So there it is. Temperatures are going to top out near 80 on Tuesday. Showers coming up Wednesday, drier through Friday, and a chance for showers Saturday and Sunday. Thanks for joining us on the Weather Desk. I'm meteorologist Craig Moeller. We'll see you next time.